first 9 cabinet nominations. And this morning, as Avalia promised you, a discussion this morning stems from the top story. And in studio, we have governance expert Kevin Osido and political analyst, of course, Bernard as well as Bernard Okoli. Bernard Okoli is a political analyst. Yeah. Joining the conversation from our office that is in Lavington is Executive Director FIDA, Teresa Omondi. She's going to tell us more because the so-called first 9 of President Uhuru Kenyatta did not have any woman in the list. She's going to tell us what she reads in that move by the president, of course, by extension, the Jubilee administration. This is the news center. Welcome to the discussion, gentlemen. Happy New Year, Kevin.
To you too,
Happy New Year, Bernard. Good to see you both. Welcome to the show. Bernard, let me start with you. And we have a lot, of course. Yes. You know, we never cease to talk about politics in Kenya, even after the election. So let me begin with these alleged cracks in Jubilee. Of course, the deputy president tweeted yesterday saying that, calling on, Kenyans and mostly Jubilee supporters to desist from talking about 2022 politics and focus more on delivering services for Kenyans. So what are you reading in this? Are you seeing some sort of a split in Jubilee?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Indeed, looking at where we are coming from, politically and of course as a country, it is true and right to say that there are seemingly some sort of division in the House, because in 2013, when a similar exercise and project was being run, we saw the two boys standing side by side and more or less giving each other the gusto, the encouragement.
The bromance was very much evident.
It was indeed quite something interesting. And looking at the manner in which cabinet positions have been filled up in the past, that was really a first one for Kenya and for Kenyans. And so the same thing happening right now, where the president comes up and reading from his tone of voice and from his body language, you could probably say that indeed something did not work out very well. And given the expectation of Kenyans, in the manner that we had been promised a first-time announcement, which did not take place. Then he made his New Year message and he promised Kenyans that I'm going to ensure that this is done. And so we, of course, expected to see something similar to what happened in 2013, where both of them would come forward and give us the dream team to be able to deliver the 4-point agenda. But of course, the discussion will keep going on, and the deputy president, probably you can begin to look at his interest for 2022, as much as he's of course used his Twitter account and made his voice to be read in the manner that he's not interested and people should desist. Yes. But we will begin to look at who these are and how these are going to play, and not again that I am sure that they're also looking for a team that can be able to curtail and maintain NASA and especially Raila Odinga. And so it will be very important to look at who these people are and what the perspective of the deputy president and his people from, of course, the numbers, because for Kenya, elections are really about numbers and who these people are going to be.
We've had that so many times.
And the women, as of course, already they are missing in the picture.
We are going to talk shortly about 2022 politics. But Bernard, what sparked this speculation about the rift between the deputy president and the president is when, he was absent, of course, when the president made this announcement of his partial cabinet. But the deputy president is already on record having said that there's no conflict whatsoever between him and the president. What are you reading in all this?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. And in my own view, I think the president, just to echo what my friend Kevin has indicated, the president has already been made in 2013, where we had the two gentlemen coming up and on the media and supporting each other. They were dressed in almost uniform, white shirts, red ties. But what we're being told is that by that time they were in a coalition sort of government, and now it's a one-party government, because by then we had URP and TNA and other parties that had joined the Jubilee coalition. But now we have Jubilee as a party and as a single party. And by such, we have president who is the head of the party and the deputy president. So we don't have two people sharing power. So that might, to some extent, explain why the president decided to do it alone. But some reports have indicated that the office of the deputy president was not informed or adequately briefed about what was going on. And when we see that we are talking about the presidency, and the president is about the president, deputy president, and the cabinet, so, and the executive. So we hoped that when the president was naming his first lineup of 3 and 6 gentlemen, we'll see the deputy president indicated that he supports the list or has been briefed. But we have not seen the deputy president actually saying he supports or is, he was briefed or such.
Those are details that are still missing, apart from the tweet yesterday.
So we need a cooperative kind of government where the president and the deputy are showing uniform or are showing collaboration in terms of appointments. Another thing I would like to mention is that maybe the media could also be reading so much, and the media is amplifying this thing to look as if the government is collapsing, and I don't think so. Let's give them benefit of the doubts and expect that they will name the remaining.
Of course, the conversation the media is having is of course informed by the fact that the deputy president was missing.
And also, it was wrong because I'm told even the media was not adequately briefed about the briefing.
Actually, it's only one channel that was invited during that press briefing. Now, Osido, we're talking about 2 issues here. One is that President Uhuru Kenyatta is trying to leave behind a legacy in his final term. Sure. And another one, on the other hand, the Deputy President is trying to lay foundation for the 2022 politics. Do you think this might have shaped the rift that we are seeing, perhaps?
Precisely so. And in fact, this is something that we need to look at from not just what is happening from the New Year's happenings, but indeed right from the Jubilee party nominations. Because you note that when we were going into the 2017 elections, to a given extent, when the process began from within Jubilee, there was lots of confusion. People did not know exactly what to expect insofar as the nominations were concerned, until when now the deputy president was named by the president as coming in to be the chief campaigner to sort out the nomination mess. And you could tell that the deputy president, William Ruto, was keen to more or less handpick, quote unquote, because then we had lots of people talking about how there were certain governors that were expected to win were knocked out. And from then you could tell that the deputy president was beginning to put up a team that in his view would help him to carry on the mantle from the president right now into 2022. Yes. And over time, you note that then that is something that as part of the presidency, because we've also had this debate around what exactly is the role and function of the deputy president. And there's a debate that is currently going on even at the county levels, the role and function of a deputy governor, because then all those confusions must then begin to be seen to be sorted out. And this is something, Hussein, that we will continue to see until we go into elections. But the deputy president is a political player, an ardent and very aggressive campaigner at that. And I can, of course, really credit him for a lot of work that was done to ensure that Jubilee is in government for 2017. Now, the DP, in my view, would be very keen to ensure that even the people that are going to be part of this second generation process that is going to deliver the 4-point agenda is a team that is, he would probably have wielded certain aspects or certain frame of influence. And so for a cabinet secretary to be able to sit in, because we saw this happening also from 2013, where in fact he was very influential in putting in place names of people in certain very influential positions like energy, finance, and all that. So I am very sure that from his team and from where he sits, he is also feeling like I have to have a say in what is happening so that I can guarantee my place in 2022.
But on the same note, speaking about 2013, they did promise that the cabinet will be formed of by technocrats. I mean, they'll not have politicians. But 5 years after that, what changed? Because we've seen 6 names have been written, the 3 have been mentioned. Apart from Tobacco, the 2 are, one is an ex-governor, another one is an ex-senator.
I think looking at what happened in 2013, the constitution and the government or the president thought that by appointing technocrats they will be able to deliver his manifesto or the manifesto that they promised to the Kenyan people. But along the way, they realize that we need politicians to defend our position, to defend, it's a political process. And if we just have technocrats where they go somewhere, they talk about policies, you know, Kenyans don't like police kind of talks.
Fred Matiang'i is one of them, and he's really delivered.
Fred Matiang'i's delivery is seen to be delivering because he has presidency here. You know, the cabinet is supposed to serve the interests of the president. So when the cabinet secretary is close to the presidency or has presidency here, is seen to be performing. But those cabinet secretaries who cannot, maybe sometimes even access the president, it makes them very difficult to perform and deliver their services and their duties. So I think it's the Uhuru government realized that they needed politicians in the cabinet, and as you have seen, most of the people who are taken from the politics have been seen to be very vocal. In fact, during the re-election of president and his deputy, you have seen them, people like Eugene Wamalwa, people like Najib Balala, you know, going out there. In fact, Kiunjuri, at sometimes they were being accused that they were government officials, they were public servants, at the same time engaged in politics. Look at cabinet secretary like Judy Wahungu, where she has not been seen anywhere in political rallies. Rachel Mamo, you know, those are now the technocrats, people who are seen to be like follow the book and deliver on the manifesto. So it's very important that a political process involves political players. And to me, they have performed both in the ministry and in politics quite well.
Kevin, do you agree with Barnett that the president really needs politicians in his cabinet?
You see, for 2017, 2022 is unique because the president is not vying for a second term unless he chooses to push Kenyans through a referendum to change the constitution like our other friends are doing to extend this term limit. But I think he's made it very clear, and the constitution is clear about 1 year renewable, so you have 10 years. So he's very keen to do two things. One is to present a legacy that Kenyans can keep thinking and remembering.
Politicians in this cabinet.
Yes, indeed, I am coming to that. And then it is also unique in the sense that what is happening between now and 2022 is that he is leaving, so his deputy would be seen to be coming up. The third thing, Hussein, is NASA NRM. Maintaining NASA.
Hussein, I'm Yusuf.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Yusuf, yeah. Is to be able to contain the activities of NASA.
Yes.
Because you do not want to be seen to be a government that does not have teeth that can bite. And so the people who will be able to help the government to be able to deal with the NASA and the other activities of the opposition would want, therefore, that there are politicians who understand the game, people who have been part of this process, and they are able to delink between official duty of a cabinet secretary, and when it gets to politics, they are also able to ensure that they deal with the political aspects. Because the president, I don't think in his second term, as it were, he would want to be seen to be spending too much time politicking. So he'd therefore want to concentrate, and I like the fact that he's kept and continually went on to talk about the 4-point agenda, which Kenyans are actually looking at service delivery, because a government exists, in my view, to be able to deliver those services. So those three things will really determine whether there are politicians, and I read from some report that already they are thinking about, out of the 22 slots, they are thinking about 12 politicians. Now, that is going 12 of them. That is going to be...
We have 13 more that have not been named, right?
Yes, as per the constitution is 18 plus 4, because then you have the deputy president, the president, and then the secretary to the cabinet, and then the attorney general.
So we already have 9 nominees who have been named.
Sure.
So how many more do we have?
We have about 11 more.
11 more. So you're saying all this might be politicians?
12 of the cabinet, from what is being seen out there.
People like Governor, former Senator of Turkana,
Munyes.
politician Munyes, and you know,
former Governor Isiolo. Yeah.
Now, there are those who come from the school of thought, Bernard, that if Jubilee delivers this time round, all their promises, I mean, Deputy President William Ruto, as much as he's saying it's a bit premature to discuss 2022 politics, then it will be a smooth landing for him.
We expect actually the general public, and it's hopeful that the Jubilee government will deliver on its 4-point agenda, which is in line with the Vision 2030, because we're also approaching the Vision 2030 kind of promises. And when 2030 reaches and we have not achieved a number of them, so any manifesto should be aligned to realizing Vision 2030. So the government or the country expects the Jubilee government to deliver on its promises. And if they don't, then it will be a big blow to the deputy president, because on what platform will he go out there and stand and say, okay, we have been in government for 10 years, and what have you delivered? What have you, you know, such kind of thing that happened to former prime minister after being prime minister for 5 years. Then, you know, he says my powers were being curtailed by President Kibaki. Then people were asking, what the question that kept on, you know, being asked on Raila, you have been in government for 4 years, 5 years. What have you done? What did your minister or what did your department do? You know, and there was nothing tangible. You know, we came up with things like Kazi kwa Vijana, which collapsed prematurely. You know, it was engulfed with so much corruption. You know,
so basically, you're saying there's no excuse whatsoever.
There's no excuse for William Ruto not to perform and tell Kenyans this is what we have delivered, this is what we have achieved. I've seen the free, in quotes, free secondary education being, you know, rolled out. Parents have taken children to school in day schools. And, you know, as much as it's free on that promise alone, parents are still crying that they are paying too much. So we expect some of the things, the promises that were made to be actualized in its full entity, not piecemeal kind of deliveries.
Yes, and we've talked a lot about Jubilee. We're going to talk about NASA shortly, but let's just focus on the partial cabinet nominees. Actually, Kevin, you're going to talk about DPP, immediate former DPP, Keriako Tobiko, and as to why he resigned and chose to join the cabinet.
Yes.
But another hot issue has everything to do with, you know, women. They were missing in the first 9 that were announced by President Uhuru Kenyatta on Friday. Those are the nominees for various cabinet portfolios. And now just to tell us more on... I'm going to talk to, of course, the Executive Director, FIDE, that is Teresa Omondi. She's coming to us live from our office in Lavington. Good morning, Teresa. Of course, the President has announced part of his cabinet on Friday, and women were missing. What do you have to say about that?
I must tell you it was the most shocking news that we had, especially after all the efforts that we have done as women in this country. We've been challenged many times to up our game, to get competent women, to get women who can work for the public and this government. And the list is endless of women who can do it. And even the cabinet secretaries that he had in his last cabinet, I doubt whether he would say all the 6 just failed and they didn't deliver. So we are very worried. It was the most horrific news to get. And this is one of the issues that we really want to take up with our president and ask him what message is he passing to the nation.
Teresa, of course, the president has announced the first 9. Apparently, there are more positions that are yet to be announced, about 11 of them. Do you think it's a bit premature to criticize the president at this moment because he has not yet announced or given out the full list?
Actually, it's not, because if you have your top 9 and you cannot get at least 1 in the first 9, because I know the argument might be that's not necessarily my top 9, but in your first 9, if you can't even pick 1 woman, it's worrying. It makes people get worried about the trend. What will happen in the next 11 who are coming? Because, again, that means he set a very high standard for himself, that out of the 11, then he has to choose 9
so
women,
the fact
so
that there are no women in the first 9...
of his 22...
Sorry to cut you short, Teresa.
So that
one more question. That those who are saying that, you know, the women who were part of the other cabinet failed to deliver, but those who are also saying that, you know, the likes of Amina Mohammed did well, but still failed to make it in the first 9. Do you think there are some hidden issues going on meant to make sure that women don't get into leadership positions?
Actually, that is our contention. There could be a hidden reason, because if someone doesn't deliver, then you outrightly say you have been dropped because you did not deliver. Just like you've rightfully said, there are women out of the 6 who did very well. Just the same way as we had men who did very well. And at the same time, we have men who didn't do well and they were retained. So what criteria is the president using?
Now, Teresa, one final question. What is your general opinion towards women leadership in Kenya? Because we've seen the likes of Rwanda, who have about 65% of women representation in parliament. I believe that is the highest, not just in Africa, but across the world. What do you think needs to be done to make sure that women get into these positions of leadership?
I think we just need to move away from our socialization and our cultural beliefs, because it really has nothing to do with competency or women who are able to work in the public sector. So it is time that our leadership, in this case our president and the deputy president, being able to do what the Constitution requires of them. It is clear that there should be a participation of women. Just like the country you've mentioned, Rwanda, it is in their constitution, and so they are just implementing what is in their constitution. So we also have a very beautiful constitution, one of the best in the world. It's just simple, implement the constitution provisions. And the provisions of gender equality or gender equity are as important as any other provision of the constitution. So we shouldn't have other provisions being implemented, but the gender ones being frustrated. So that's just the simple logic.
Teresa, your final comment or my final question. What is your message to the president and by extension Jubilee, even as they try to piece together, come up with names of the next group of nominees?
Women are part of Kenyans. Women form part of voters in this country, and women are part of the citizens of Kenya. They need equal representation. They need to be given space to also serve Kenyans. So my message to them is, first, stick to what the Constitution provides. They had also a manifesto that they made promises to women in this country. So it is time to deliver on those promises. And we are part of Kenyans, and we need to be treated fairly.
Teresa Omondi, thank you very much for your comment there. She is the Executive Director, FIDA, talking to me all the way from her office in Lavington. Now, Osido, back in studio.
Yes.
And women are not just missing the cabinet portfolios, they're also missing the other appointments that were made.
Indeed.
Apparently, the president announced ambassadors. I mean, there are changes in the security docket. I mean, what's happening?
The president, His Excellency the President, should not consider any part of this country in terms of the citizenry as second-class citizens. And I would probably want to echo the words of the ED of FIDA, my friend Teresa, because even among the youth, there is no under 35, for instance, as per our Constitution, Article 260 of that, J says that 18 to 35. And so this is a debate, and it's more or less a narrative that we'll continue to sing until when the government and the appointing authority is willing to listen to the entire framework and the mosaic nature of our country. Because really, it is only about political goodwill and the support that you need to be able to deliver an agenda. And I think in his second term, he's been very clear about his 4-point agenda. But that is an agenda that indeed, if you look at many of those things that he wants to deliver, it is about the future of this country. It is the youth who are going to carry on to the future. And it is indeed the women who are much more of very hard workers. If you go to any of the farms in this country, a bigger number of the people that you will see are actually women. The people that you see pushing the economy of this country beside manufacturing and agriculture, and even in those very clear sectors, it is the women who have a higher representation of the workforce and all that. So the president and the team that is working behind these positions really need to rethink about, yes, it is about our legacy, but what message is he sending to the part of the country, to the other parts of the framework of this country? So
Yes.
it has to be about women, their space. And we've had this debate from 2013 to 2017, the two-thirds gender rule,
Yes.
the political will behind it. And I don't think that the president wants to be bogged. I remember during one of the memorial services of, I think, his sister or a relative, he actually made a commitment that the National Assembly, he made a directive actually, that the National Assembly was going to pass the law to ensure that women are given their space. We want to see that happening right from where he is sitting.
Bernard, the issues Kevin has raised and what the FIDA Executive Director, have raised as something that the President is very much aware of.
Yeah.
Do you think he was ill-advised, misadvised when he announced his first 9? Because there are those who have compared this with a football team, you know, because people are missing the first 11, then that says a lot about your performance.
I think it has nothing to do with advising or, you know, getting a third opinion. The President is in his full mind and, you know, is a person of sound mind to make decisions. He knows very well what the Constitution talks about, the issue of gender. And I think if the Attorney General was to advise him, he will not have advised him to name 9 without a woman. And you realize that, and also youth to some extent, because when you look at the 2017 campaigns, you realize that young people, especially young men and women, played a very major role in ensuring that in campaign processes for both the NASA and the Jubilee parties. But when it comes to appointments and, you know, being given what they deserve, we start seeing a lot of politics. It's men who are, you know, elder men who are being recycled and given opportunities that can be given to a young person, a young energetic person to push the agenda forward. So as much as we need young people to actively participate in political processes, in campaigns, you know, in branding, in doing all those things, we also expect them to get appointments, to get opportunities, to be given opportunities that they can exercise their, you know, their creativity, not just being hired during campaigns, as well as women. We need women as they come to campaign. We saw the Jubilee Brigade, Women Brigade, you know, parading themselves and, you know, going out there and campaigning for the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. In NASA, we had a lobby group called, I don't know, Daughters of Raila, you know. These are young women who just came up and said, no, we need to do something. Yes. So if the appointments are being read out and we don't see some of those names that we saw out there campaigning, and most of those women are very much qualified. Most of them are graduates. Most of them have been in the public life for quite long. We need to see the President actually meeting his promises to the Kenyans, because if you need me to help you achieve something, then I also need a reward.
And you see, Yusuf...
but Kevin, as much as we're going to react to that, do you think this in some way reflects our society? Because imagine this, if the President could have gone ahead, announced his first 9, and they were all women. The DIJ, the Director of Criminal Investigation, were all women. I'm sure we could have seen some sort of an uproar in the country.
To be honest with you, I don't think the men would really want to question that if the first 9 were women. Because you note that as a country, we've come from this patriarchal system, and we have been carved in a manner to look at women as second after men. And there have been lots of campaigns to ensure that the space of women is not only protected, but also carved in a manner that any young woman who is coming up would want to say, I want to be like the late Wangari Maathai and all that, because of the efforts that they have been able to undertake and the things that they've been able to achieve. And so given that kind of thing, then I don't think the men, and I am a man, would come here and castigate the President for that, because then, and I like the aspect of comparison and benchmarking from other countries. And those other countries are looking at us as Kenyans to be able to learn certain things from us. And if we cannot be able, so therefore, to learn certain things from them and therefore build this regional block of friends and brothers and sisters who can be able to do certain things in a similar manner, like Rwanda is doing it, like Uganda is doing it, and others, then indeed it leaves us wondering what kind of trajectory are we looking at? Because all these efforts, even to be able to ensure that there is gender equality and that the women are as empowered. And the President, I will continue saying, I've seen even the First Lady launching very progressive programs to be able to ensure that women representation is enhanced, to be able to ensure that women sit at the decision-making table and not just people to be served the dishes and all that. We want to see that happening right from where His Excellency the President is seated. And further to that is, like my friend Wakoli has said, the role that women have been able to play in not only campaigns, but even ensuring that decisions are made. One of the chief agents of His Excellency the President was a lady. And that, in my view, presents the way or a manner in which we look at our women, if they can be able to make decisions at that very in-house level. How about overtly? Can we be able to have the space expanded for the women also to participate in those policy decisions?
Thank you, Kevin and Bernard. I think we're almost out of time, and I'm sure women who are watching should be very much happy because we're championing their interest. Very briefly, Bernard. Actually,
just briefly on the women agenda. You know, there have been discussions and debates surrounding the issue of these conversations, because women come out strongly to advocate for their rights when it comes to appointive, these lucrative positions. But we need this debate to be taken further. Even in military, we need to see women in the forefront, in battlefield, We need to see the recruitment of police, how many women have been recruited vis-a-vis men, and all those aspects, so that women are not just seen to be advocating for these lucrative positions, comfortable zones, MPs, MCAs, cabinet secretaries, We need this debate to be taken further. We need to know how many women are in the military, how many women are on the forefront in the battlefield,
I like how we are championing the interest. Yes, thank you very much, Bernard Wakoli, who is a political analyst, as well as Kevin Osido, who is a governance expert. Of course, this is the conversation we're having right here on News Center this morning, and at this hour, I'll take you to Kisumu shortly because the public inquest into baby Samantha Pendo's killings start today. Our reporter Kevin Ogutu is on standby. What you're seeing there, live pictures from the courts. Apparently, the inquest was ordered by the office of the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions. The case is set to be mentioned today. 21 people have already been lined up to testify. We'll have that in